Hello and welcome to the King Heroes Journey podcast. My name is Beth Martins, and I'm happy to be here with the men's panel part 2, which we promised, and I feel very inspired to do. We're going to talk about healing the masculine. Even that word healing isn't very masculine, but there's not a lot of words for that on the other side. I am going to go ahead and get Rockfin going. It tells me that it's ready to go. So if anybody would like to go over to Rockfin, there is a link here that I'm just sharing in the chat. We're live to Facebook, we're live to YouTube, X, Rumble, Rockfin, as I just mentioned, and also Vigilante TV, which is Jeff Berwick's platform over there. Nice. And Na has excellent attendance over on Rockfin. Hello, nice to see you. That's great. And so I actually missed playing the intro because I'm still getting used to having that as an intro. Shall we do it now and give a few minutes? There's two people still trying to make their way on.
Sure.
All right. So give me a second. I'm going to set that up. And this is, oh, that's great. Here comes SB. Still getting used to having an intro and extra. It's a little chunky. Here we go. Okay, so I'll let this play and we'll be back with you guys in just 1 minute. And SB, welcome if you can hear me. We'll see you in a minute as well. All right. How's that for a chunky start? We are back again. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Really good to have you.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, we might be having Scott join us as well, Scott Leipes, who is here for part 1, but we will just go with it because I'm good at improvising with what is rather than worrying about what is not. I hope he's all right. We'll send our blessings to, I'm sure he's okay. And so in this interview, we're going to follow up with the conversation we started. The last one was really good. So if you want to go back on any of my channels and catch part 1, that would be great. You won't be lost or anything if you're just tuning in now. But today we're going to talk about what obstacles might actually be uniquely masculine when it comes to healing work. What are the maybe cultural, philosophical, and even religious indoctrination that plays a part in that? I'd like to go deeper into the role of male initiation and some of the not so speakable sides of that tends to bring up a lot of my feelings. That's good releasing material. We'll also talk about how the way that men are positioned in the healing world, either by themselves or by the healing world itself, how that's affected relationships with women in particular, because I feel that the relationship between men and women is a secret weapon that the powers that ought not to be have been trying to destroy for quite some time. They've been incredibly successful in positioning men and women against each other, creating a belief that masculine and feminine are somehow opposing energies, when in reality they are actually one archetype operating together perfectly by design. So I'll take a few minutes just to introduce the guys that are already here. Douglas Fleckman is new to this panel. Welcome. I'm so glad you could make it here. He is, all of the folks here are Journey Code coaches who've been through the training. And Douglas, in particular, offers healthy solutions for the mind and body as a life, health, and wellness coach. Didn't I tell you not to call yourself a life coach?
I know, but it was on my card, so I couldn't.
So I can't stop it. And with 30 years of experience, no doubt, or no less, practicing as a certified clinical nutritionist, Douglas specializes in emotional trauma release, and helping people get unstuck, which starts by loving your cells. He empowers his clients by showing them how they can build health from within and moving forward in their life. And you can contact him at douglasfleckman.com, which I will put in the chat so you guys can click on that. And Sean SB Alger is here again, which is really fun. I love creating reasons to connect with you, Sean. I feel like we're friends, and even though we've never met in person. He's an artist.
Yet.
Not yet, exactly. I know. I feel it coming and creating some kind of more in-person meetings with you guys. Sean is an artist, musician, writer, and gardening junkie. Sean currently appears in the symposium style live stream called Weaving Spiders Webs almost every Saturday, which I'm not as consistent as I used to be. Something is happening on Saturdays.
Well, we're taking a break right now anyway.
Perfect.
So
that's perfect timing.
Anyway, I don't know for how long, but at least for a couple weeks, probably. Just things are just pretty tight and busy. That we've got a lot of people heading over to the, or at least 2 members heading over to the Flat Earth Festival. I think it's in North Carolina, and as soon as you create a little bit of space, of course, it's easy to do something else. But I don't think we'll be gone very long. So. Good
to hear. But I'm also glad I'm not missing, because I have that. What is it? FOMO, fear of missing out thing. Try to let that go. And that's along with Jim Madden, Ben Balderson, Ellen Marcus, who I reached out to. Maybe he's shy, and their guests or other spider participants as well. I've been a guest on that show. Sean has studied and commented on conspiracy, esoterica, parapolitics, and meme culture for a number of years. He's also a release coach under my Journey Code certification training that has just started. Michelle is here, and Stacy Sunshine, welcome. And you can find links to SB's work at his website, sbalger.com. You can also follow him through various social media, which he is good at attending. And lastly, you can get a custom-made original art shower curtain from Sean that I every single day. I love it. When I went into my bathroom and I backlight it, I've got a light in the shower and I backlight it, and it just creates a nice ambiance, very gentle light for night. Yeah. When you go to.
I just made one for my mom, so that makes me happy,
Nice. That's awesome. So here's Douglas's website in the chat. You can click on that, and this is SB's as well. And so hopefully Scott makes it, but we'll see how that goes. Ryan Ashley, welcome. I'm glad you're here. He's trained as a certified electromagnetic radiation assessment specialist, and he's a neural vitality network practitioner specializing in EMF assessment and remediation of fields and frequencies, including AC magnetic, AC electric, and radio frequency, as well as dirty electricity, in addition to geopathic stress mitigation for homes, offices, farms, and businesses. And he also coaches people in the freedom movement to get past their sensitivities. Ryan has done a great deal of work in the trauma and birth arena, and it's been actually pretty amazing to work with you and see, how far you've come, and then how you have been able to take that work to new levels with the training that I do as well. And you can find him and take him up for his assessments in the state of Colorado. I know you do travel as well to do your work, so that would be a good thing. I was in my place last night, and I was just imagining, I'm probably frying to death in here for all kinds of reasons, and I've been rising above it, but I don't know how long that can necessarily go on, but it's a really good thing. If you haven't joined the House of Free Will yet, there is a great workshop with Ryan there, so you can catch that.
And I do remote assessments too, Beth.
Okay. Very good to know. All right. Well, maybe I'll have to take you up on that.
And he writes music too.
And he's a songwriter. Exactly. Yeah. And a poet, beautiful poet. In fact, he wrote a poem for this exact stream last week when we did it. Yeah. It's wonderful. And last but least, David Manal, who is Trinity 4 on YouTube and a variety of other platforms, considers himself to be a reality shatterer. And he knows that that's almost never welcomed. I know it also. I have that inside myself. I even asked a client the other day, do I have permission to blow your mind? And she said, yes. That was really fun for me. I do like that. And, the truth is never welcomed, almost always rejected at first. We know that. I'm in the midst of a bit of a conflict right now, looking at new knowledge and information, especially with nutrition, and it contradicts everything that I've ever studied. And many of my colleagues are up in arms about that. But as I mentioned to him, I like the truth more than I want to be right, or I want to avoid any remorse for my past and how I might have ruined my son with the way I've fed him, for example, all of that kind of stuff. Dave offers flat earth information to break new ground, sow seeds, and support new shoots who know the only way is up for the canopy and down for the roots. And crucially, that earth is the heart, the center of the known universe. Heliocentrism, he says, requires many beliefs, including that there is no true up or down, such confusion for souls trapped in this delusion. But he's empathetic because he's been there himself and knows it takes a long time and a lot of inner work to let go of external authorities to realign with true north. And he says, this is where I can do my best work with the advantage of Treaty Code training in 9 years, walking the long road to freedom. He's well placed to support people seeking to make sense of their life, their life purpose as we exit Disneyland and create anew. So I will share with you his YouTube channel link where you can go and connect with him and see his videos and live streams. And hello again to Stacy Sunshine, who's calling us babies. I'm assuming that's a compliment. I'll take that as a compliment. I often feel like a baby myself. People having babies going flat. Okay, that's very good. And welcome again, Michelle. It's wonderful to have you here. And what did she say? You can meet him, Earl, if you're lucky in Idaho. I'm not sure what that means. And Michelle's been looking forward to this panel. Fantastic. All right, so we're going to just dive right in and get into this topic. First of all, I want to say what an immense privilege it is to hear inside what for my entire life has been an enormous mystery, and that is the psyche of a man. Knowing that that's a very big, broad statement, but that it has been a mystery to me. It, where women tend to say a great deal about their inner life, and in 20 minutes, a woman can download their whole life to me somehow. It's amazing, and then men tend to share less about that, and there might be some natural reasons for that, and there might be some unnatural reasons for that. As I mentioned, we're looking for a new word for healing because it's not very masculine, can be maybe more about making changes. Maybe that's actually a place to start. If what other ways could we describe healing that might actually a man could relate to more? Just to put you all on the spot there.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's a bad word as much as maybe it's just got a bit of a bias or an anchoring. Because we all require and need healing anytime we're injured or damaged. It doesn't matter what our gender is or our sex is, Like if you get a cut on your hand, the body's naturally going to heal it. If you do the right things, then it'll heal faster and more effectively. If you do the wrong things, then it may not heal at all, So, but it doesn't mean that it's bad to explore extra descriptors or adjectives or other words that also lead to. That's what I love about words. They all have a very specific vibration to them. That's why there's so many of them. That's why some people are so obsessed with the details of language, is because even though house and home might be similar, you could argue that they're very different, right?
Right. Well, and fascinating because there aren't a lot of words for healing, right? Like if you go to your thesaurus, there's not like a big selection of those. Neither do I want to put myself or anyone in word jail. I've been there a lot in the last 4 years, so we don't need to obsess about it. But Ryan, do you have any take on that?
Oh my goodness, that's just that almost can go and into infinity in all directions. 'Cause I think maybe in some respects, healing could be appealing to men in the context of purpose, certainly in the context of power and freedom, but not power in terms of personal power. It's just power, I think, in terms of freedom and embracing God. It's never your power anyways, but that power is also gives you the power to heal more. It's self-perpetuating. It's like you're your own energy system, and the more you heal, the more you have capacity to heal. So that's it's a huge incentive, I think.
There you go. Yeah, and you said that that word that I love so much is purpose, which can be an amazing motivator for those that actually want purpose. It's not everyone that can remember to want that. But if you've got to that place in your life where you know there's a reason that you're here and you're meant to, serve people in a certain way, and then in order to do that, you got to get past the challenges and obstacles that stand in the way of you really bringing that elixir back to your people. So that was actually one of the amazing conclusions of our last panel, was how, it's not really different how men heal. It's the different motive or a different appeal, different reasons that they would enter into that work.
Mm-hmm.
So I loved hearing that. And David, would you like to say something about what that maybe that word brings up for you, or what it means for you?
Well, when you're training a dog, you teach it to heel, come to heel. That's to come to your foot and to come to order. And when I talk about the electromagnetic universe and us as electromagnetic or electrical beings, I often refer to us as being, if you take this as being like the center line or the ecliptic, that we are in a state of kind of sometimes being out of alignment, and we could say unhealed. And so for me, bringing ourselves into alignment is the key purpose of healing. Is coming back into our fullness, our best version of ourselves, is to bring back or to disengage from those electrical impulses or those imbalances that are bringing us out of our natural sine wave. And when I talk to people about this, I liken it to the sort of left-right politics thing, because we are pulled left and right with politics, but somewhere in the center is probably the best place for us to be. Not too far left, not too far right. And I also say that the head is like the sheep. And so above the line, this sine wave that I'm drawing here, the above the line is the sort of sheep. So you're too much in your head, or below the line, and now you're too much in the lower chakras, or too much in the trousers, as I say in the street when I'm talking to people about this. And so I think that on, like, the Christian cross is this sort of, if I spread my arms and stand up straight, I look like the Christian cross. We all do. And at the center of the Christian cross is the heart, or the center of you is the heart. And so I think that wherever our misalignment is, we're always seeking to come back into balance and coming back into the heart, whether it be too much in the head, too much in the trousers, too left wing, too right wing, coming into neutrality or into balance. So that's where, whatever the healing requirement is for a person, it's about bringing themselves back into a neutral state rather than left or right, or too acidic or too alkaline.
You're muted, Beth.
You're muted.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's interesting to talk about balance. I can be really like cheeky and cocky and say balance is bullshit, but I had a little revelation on balance. And I don't mean to just totally challenge you, but here's a paradigm that I go with on balance is that it always is. You cannot get out of balance, but the way that things look and appear in our lives can can seem really out of balance, right? Getting reactions in your body you don't want, reactions from people you don't want, the circumstances not of your liking. And so it's probably just playing with words, but I was thinking about it too, how there's a lot of people are talking about balance, and then you just need to get to the center, and then you're not there and you're not there, you're just like in the middle of it, in the fulcrum. And how I've learned to see it is that balance always is. It's non-negotiable. That's what the world does. It's all connected. It's always going to be in a state of balance, but it might not be the balance that we want. And it's not of our liking, right? Like when your body's busy detoxing and you feel terrible and you got body pain and all of that kind of thing, it's easy to say, I'm out of balance. It's like, no, well, this is how balance looks right now. I think we're actually saying the same thing. I'm just hooked on that word a little bit. And then you could look at also balance, say, where there's two poles as a kind of map. And then to me, more and more, I'm aware how the purpose of any map of like polarization, where there's those two positions, is actually to get off the map, because that's where freedom is. Otherwise, you're always on a pendulum. And wrestling with it, right? Oh, too far left. Oh, gotta work my way back to right. Anyway, so I just wanted
oscillating oscillating between the two states. But I think just my thoughts are that it's like a metronome, or a pendulum. Once it's been set in motion, there is going to be a swinging left and right until eventually it settles somewhere sort of in the center. But yeah, I think for me, I'm not averse to the term healing, because I understand that if you break a leg, you're gonna, you want to heal that, right? It needs to heal. That's understandable. And I think for my perspective on men is that, we don't necessarily like to acknowledge that we've got broken legs in the sort of psychological, the heart problem, the heart issue, and so on. So maybe I've been trying to find language that sort of fits with what I believe is the perception of what men are going to be able to relate to when it comes to fixing them, or not fixing, but sorting their shit out as it.
No, I agree with that, David. That it popped into my, I immediately went to my etymology and my thesaurus app, and so under just the word heal, not healing, we've got cure, make better, make well, remedy, mend, restore. I like that. Improve. I mean, improve is a debatable word. Treat, soothe, comfort, salve, settle, reconcile was another one that seemed decent to me. I think those are the two that stuck out. That if you can acknowledge that something is good, but that it could stand to be better, can be restored, or that if something feels out of balance or has a place that it could move into that's improved or of greater clarity, then it could be reconciled. But I would agree that most men, in my experience, they either do not see it. They're in denial of the fact that they might have these issues, or they got a stubborn awareness and then an indignation against it anyway. Like, oh, that's just the fucking way that I am. That's just the way I am, just going to have to deal with it. That's, it's whatever, right? This combination of arrogance and apathy is a common projection I see, and I'm not leaving myself out. Depending on what you decide to confront me on any given day, that may be my attitude as well. So.
Very good points. Very good points. And Douglas, would you like to just share a little bit?
Sure.
Yeah.
SB, nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too.
So the first thing I thought about was empowerment. And then everybody else took off. And I mean, it was just fascinating to hear all the comments that I was kind of thinking about that. But that was what I first came up with. Now it's kind of like a blend of everybody else, what everybody else has talked about. So,
Nice. Yeah, I like that a lot because now, I don't know if men relate as much to disempowerment as a woman does. Maybe we all relate to it equally in a way just because of our situation, especially in the world right now. And um, what I was teaching yesterday in the first Journey Code class was about our operating system. And then I asked a cheeky question: if this is your operating system, who is the operator?
uh,
Right? And the answer is pretty obvious at that once you're to that level of the question. But as we go through our daily life, are we actually acting like the operator of our system, or are we just troubleshooting all of the, things that are like showing up as very unhealthy balances? Maybe another way to say that or frame that. And like the number of times, here's an example. I had a small miracle yesterday. So giving that class and preparing for that class obviously built up a bunch of tension in my body. Well, by the end of it, I had a migraine, and I was in a lot of pain, and I thought I was going to throw up. And I'm like, oh my God, I have to take painkillers to keep up with the rest of my day. And then I'm going like, I just gave a bunch of different advice to people, so I think I'm gonna try this work. I'm going to lay down and see how it goes. And I even heard this, it's not going to work. I already told myself, I wasn't even believing that it was going to work. And in less than 40 minutes, completely 100% gone. I felt amazing. I felt new life in my body, all the nausea gone, all the pain gone. And it was amazing. And that's when I didn't even believe it. So that's, just the awareness that this is our system. It's listening to me, whether it's listening to my conscious instructions or more than likely my unconscious instructions, which is mostly the focus of this work. So yeah, it's a very good inquiry to make. And again, like, that something would work beyond my belief when I didn't think it was going to is just so, I don't know. I was jumping up and down for joy last night about that. So what if we get into what obstacles, this might be some overlap from last time, but I don't think it's any problem at all. And feel free to share in the chat if you guys have any particular questions or angles to cover. But what obstacles in life are uniquely masculine, whether that's cultural or natural?
I'd say appearing strong and perfect and up front. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I agree. Exactly. Yeah, there's a lot more pressure on a man, although women have their time with a perfect program. One of the lines that I heard at one point that men are indoctrinated or conditioned to take risks, and women are conditioned to be perfect. And but yeah, the appearance of strength and perfection, like you have it all together, especially when the shit is flying and things are going on, it's much more acceptable for a man to, or for a woman to lose it, to lose control, especially of her emotions, compared to a man. So yeah, I totally agree. What else do you guys think is uniquely?
I would say being overly intellectual and stuck in our heads is a pretty genuinely masculine problem in my experience.
Right. And why do you think?
Well, it's a rare occasion, I think, to see, if women are discussing things and they get emotional, even if there's anger, there's a high likeliness of tears and a sense of unreservedness, a more intimate thing. Whereas with men, that's not necessarily my experience. It's pretty rare. If men get angry, it seems to be more of a retreat and either a passive aggressive hint at violence or a potential for at least violent language or stubbornness. And so to me, that seems, and why I think a lot of it is goes back to what Douglas just said, is that we have this expectation of a perfect outward appearance, of an ability to tolerate and be strong in almost any situation. So then a fallback position is to also not be disarmed, to not feel like you're emotionally vulnerable for whatever reason.
Right, exactly. Because that's when,
To show weakness. Yeah.
right, exactly. That is when an enemy could take advantage of you if you let down your arms, for sure. Yeah. What do you think, Ryan? What?
Well, I'm gonna quote something here, and this may be a test for some who quote where this quote come from. There's none more powerful than one who will brave their emotional and spiritual deaths. Rather than weaken them, it makes them more powerful.
Right, which is very difficult to know on the side of having that, the wave of whatever emotion is coming up. It really does threaten you that it's going to disable you.
Yeah.
And then the reality on the other side is always the empowerment and the strength and the
Exactly.
clarity, right? But it's always going to threaten you exactly the opposite. I often liken the world of programming to be just exactly like the controllers use their inversions when they say up is down.
Mhm.
Programs are exactly like that.
Yeah.
Right? They're like, you're going to die and you need me to survive. Meanwhile, the life is draining out of you. So, yep, that's good.
So that was from The King, the book Journey by Beth Martin.
Oh, wow. That sounded familiar. Hilarious. Oh, thanks for quoting me. Aw, that's sweet.
Gotcha.
That reminds me that the audio book version available now, Beth?
No, I
Okay.
had
Well, don't be hard on yourself. It's okay.
Yeah,
okay. I was just because I know I'll listen to it again more easily. I'll tell the truth. I actually listened to it the first time because you sent me the PDF, but I'm sure no matter what audio version we get, it'll be better than the robot that read it to me last time. So
very good. Yeah, I recorded the whole entire thing and then I edited the whole entire thing and then I had to replace the part. I mangled it. I totally mangled it. Yeah, it was really depressing.
It makes it hard.
And sad. Yeah, so I have to go back to the drawing board a little bit and listen to. And speaking of that, if anybody wants to put their hand up as a volunteer to listen to every single minute of it and hear if things don't make sense, because I'm kind of burnt out about it. No pressure.
Yeah, I would do that.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
okay,
sure.
that would be amazing. That'd be amazing. Wow, that was easy. Very good. And David, any thoughts about that? What is uniquely masculine in the world of challenges and obstacles?
Well, I mean, I would start from the baseline of that the masculine and feminine are not in their natural habitat, if I can put it in a zoological kind of way. But we're not operating in the world like I think nature intended for us to do. So the office suit and tie and trying to get on as an executive doesn't really fit with the natural order. So the natural male environment for maybe working stuff out isn't the same as it was perhaps a few hundred years ago. The environment for lads being lads, is being homogenized and sterilized in certain ways. But I really resonate with this idea that we are kind of raised to be hard, outwardly hard, and so we don't allow for that softer exploration of the self. And I'm generalizing, of course, but that's what I think is probably that show of softness, should I say, rather than weakness, but that show of softness of self exploration is not encouraged. And I'm raised in South Africa, and I know you lads are American, but it's probably very similar, where the sort of rugby or American football type kind of mindset is where that's where the kudos is, not where you're that soft guy who's listening to everyone's problems, who's willing to open up and unpack your stuff. So we're not programmed naturally to to really work through that stuff for ourselves, with ourselves and with our peers. Women, on the other hand, if I may, as a bit late, but women, on the other hand, are, as you said, are, you know, a lot better on average when it comes to being willing to unpack their stuff, and say how it made me feel and weep about it and do all of those things, you know. Yeah.
Exactly. And a woman would rather stay in that emotional realm than just go and do the thing that needs to be done, the hard work, the hard build, the heavy lifting, for example, the being seen in the world is way harder for women. There was a comment here from Michelle saying that women, in her opinion, have a natural instinct to submit to masculine authority. This is another really good subject here. Seems like males would have a harder time with it. What do you guys think?
What, go ahead, SB.
Well, I think
Well-
that's definitely true. That if we look at things through the lens that David had mentioned, that maybe there's an essential natural way that we would function, and we've also been conditioned out of it through, you know, whatever this epoch in time is, whatever our social norms are, even if they are different from North America to South Africa to other places. But that I think in general that's true, and that maybe you have the exception to the rule in the more natural order for the highest leadership of the tribe, or maybe the king. But in general, men aren't. I would agree again with David that, you know, the idea that you're supposed to go off to a cubicle and you've got this manager type, you know, the idea that you're supposed to naturally submit to him isn't there. It's a forced submission most of the time, unless you get a rare chance that you have a powerful male figure who's doing a good, honest job as a manager. Otherwise, it's usually a contrivance in my experience. Surface level.
Right. Well,
And
it
it
is
kind of
interesting.
plays.
Mhm.
Sorry,
Go
Beth.
ahead.
It kind of
No.
plays into the question, well, or rather, what Michelle was saying about that. I completely agree with the sentiment that women are naturally inclined to, you know, follow a strong male role model and an appropriate male setup. However, our society is not set up like that, and of course, you could have a situation, and I'm not criticizing this, but you know, a situation where a man is going to work and every day being managed by a woman. You know, you've got women who've been raised to this idea that they are men's equal in the kind of work, and in many senses, women can go and do more in terms of bringing in the bread than the man in our society. So traditional roles and traditional places in the family, or in a relationship or union, are perhaps they're definitely skewed from a time gone by, and that's not at all to say this is something, you know, this is a fault of the woman or a fault of the man or whatever it is. The nature of our construct at the moment, it's not really to point the finger anywhere. I think that the call is obviously for men to step up into that role of being the strong masculine example and leader in the family, or you know, the situation. But I've felt it in my journey where there's been times when I'm on the land and my prowess as a man really comes into its own. You know, the prowess of the woman for being the nurturer, the one who's gathering up foods perhaps and preparing things and repairing, healing broken bodies or whatever. You know, people, they can fall into their strengths, and nothing felt more what's the opposite of emasculating, but something masculinizing. You know, nothing felt more masculinizing than when we were living kind of, you know, off grid, and where I needed to step up and do those things of bringing water and chopping wood, and being the family sort of security, if you like, because we don't have everything together. And that was an empowering time. So it's partly environmental and partly, for us to step up to the plate.
Yeah, that's my deepest desire right there, is to see what is natural. If we were in a natural environment, and I don't mean without buildings or electricity necessarily either, but one that was organic and was allowed to like grow and evolve in ways that aren't engineered and aren't, have a certain kind of outcome that certain people want it to have. What would we actually look like? And what I notice is that, is it pretty popular in the FE community to talk about that vacuum, that nature abhors a vacuum. Is that correct?
Abhors.
Absolutely.
Abhors, yeah. And then when there's a vacuum of power, it must be filled.
Yeah.
And I've been in situations, at least, where I perceived there to be a vacuum of power, and I'm that kind of person with the masculine energy that tends to go and fill that. And I will actually stay out of a whole bunch of environments that have a vacuum of power, because it's not my environment. So nobody's asking me to take control, but I feel a lot of pain from that vacuum not being filled properly. Yeah. Yeah. So, and then, yeah, it's not really natural for a woman to manage a man. It's not a comfortable position. I've been a manager managing men, and I could always feel a lot of pain and resentment on their side, or like at least resentment and resistance, and never really fully getting their respect or their listening. This was more in Mexico, when I had a, a position managing a whole bunch of people, including men. And it was very uncomfortable, especially with the Mexican machismo, right? That just did not go well for them. And so they would either abuse me if I allowed that, or they would need me to abuse them in order to have control. And that was really sad. It didn't last long. Yeah.
I think, am I on? Yeah, I'm on. So, we have not been shown how, in a sense. And so we have not been raised by our parents because they were too busy trying to survive, whatever. So we don't have those role models. We don't have the initiatory experience when we reach a certain age of becoming a man, so to speak, adulthood. And the women, the same, in a sense. We are feeling our way through this process now, and we've been messed with for eons by off-worlders, in-world, whoever. I mean, it's not exactly, we're not playing with a full deck here, and so we're kind of writing our own owner's manual, trying to figure out everything, and to have mutual respect for each other, and not to abuse, because some men want to be mothered. They want to be told what to do. I think that, and some women want a father figure that whatever. I mean, we just have our role models. We just have. I mean, few of us, I would say, have been shown how to survive in the world, how to work in the world, how to live in a conscious way. So we're kind of breaking that ground now, and sharing it with everyone else as we do that. And sometimes it's right. Sometimes we need to be, we need to hit a wall or something and stop and find out what are the gifts here and what do I need to learn over.
Great points, Douglas. Yeah, we are breaking ground, literally. And the beauty of that is that we get to create in our own image. And there's going to be mistakes along the way, absolutely. But it's definitely a pioneering kind of a situation. Like you said, I didn't have the right role models, and either of the feminine or the masculine, as much as I loved my mom and dad. But they were full of contortists. We're also first generation healers, right? This wasn't a thing. Even in our lifetimes, it hasn't been a thing. It's more of, that used to be really fringe or strange things to talk about, say in the UK in particular, what was the label they would give people there that I can't remember exactly, but it just wasn't acceptable to talk about spirituality or healing from wounds or anything, especially on the psychological level. Physical is more tangible and easy to deal with, so to speak. But yeah, it's a very disnatured world. Any other thoughts about that?
I think again, there's so many directions this could go, because coming back to power, to me, the way to really control men is to disempower them or to traumatize them, because they will become more subservient, because they're sort of incapacitated in terms of their own sense of direction or sense of self, and their own sense of authority. So it's I think it's really salient to highlight where we're at now in this age of healing, because the landscape is dramatically changing. Because there was something you said, Beth, where I had the thought that leadership can be something that is synergistic and complementary too. But I think there's also this quality of the masculine that always wants to, like somebody in the audience said something about the feminine wanting to, submit to that male authority.
Exactly.
But yet on the other side of that, the masculine wants to serve and support and protect the feminine. I think that's very inherent in us, whether we fully recognize it or not, because that will come out in us, just instinctively.
Right. And that is the beautiful natural circle of the masculine and feminine energy that work together so perfectly. So, the fear that feminism put in our hearts and minds, at least mine, that was that there was a time when I realized my greatest fear was being controlled by a man. I was terrified when I finally felt that inside myself. I'm like, wow, Beth, this isn't my beautiful world in here. And it it makes it like, oh, you're just going to submit, and then you're at the mercy, and there's no return energy in the process, right? But the more you submit to a man's authority, the more they want to take care of you, the more they want to be that provider, the more, but if you're always battling for that position of controlling the situation, then there's no circle at all. It's just deadlock, resistance.
Let's say it's trust. We have a huge issue with trust, unspoken, like the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
In interpersonal relationships is definitely trust, but it's not just interpersonal relationships. I'm sure you guys have all noticed with the new proliferation of all the in vogue, newfangled AI stuff. They move the button where you would usually go to push on your smartphone. Here's the place where you've touched probably 1,000 times to do some function. And now you touch it and it's not right. And you look and it's saying, hey, look, it's AI. Don't you want to use it? It's like, what are you doing? You've pattern interrupted me intentionally, trying to prompt me, and without taking away your right to say yes or no, a completely dishonest thing. And we see this constantly. That's the root of all advertising. That's why people call it black magic. That's why who is the comedian that everyone thinks is Alex Jones? I can't think of his name. But, he used to call them outright Satanists, the advertisers, right? Because they're trying to hijack that opportunity to have honest discussion, and say, no, I'm not interested in the AI right now, if that's okay. But we don't have that option. If it's that way just in the public forum where we're using free software, how much more difficult is it when you're not sure if you can trust even your lover, your mother, your sister, your coworker? You have the underlying reassurance that you probably can't trust them. And so then it deadlocks everything.
Yeah.
Because you can't establish, we have to have a foundation of trust for anything to function. I've encouraged people lots of times to get out of relationships that are very long just because you can see. And it's from personal experience. If the core trust is damaged at all, you're in serious danger. If it's damaged, like seriously damaged, like you're thinking about things that they're either plotting or doing and all this kind of stuff, it's over. You'll never regain it. as much as you'd like to and be as forgiving in your heart as you want to. I've never seen it successfully regained in any situation.
Very difficult to repair. Really, really important points around safety and the nervous system. Yeah.
And is that more uniquely with men in the masculine? That because I've heard that often, that say you have like damaged a man or you've betrayed them or something like that. You know, a woman could come around like, oh, forgive and forget, and it was really good, wasn't it? And but a man may have been like, nope, I'm never ever going to even consider trust in that relationship again. You think that's more so with men?
I think it's with the individual, because some, you know, on both sides, men or women, once their trust is broken, it is really hard to get it back. But with other individuals, you know, I mean, who can say? You know, I think I would say for the most part, it's difficult to rebuild the trust back. It takes a while, but sometimes relationships come back together and trust is rebuilt, and they go on for a lifetime. It's hard to say.
I don't know if you guys have
I
heard
could say something controversial. You know, you could speculate that women have a more are in a more common position to be betrayed and taken advantage of because of their naturally weaker or submissive position. And of course, you know, a lot of people would balk just at that statement. But so you could say that it's almost like I can't think of the word where, you know, when someone gets captured and they start to love their oppressor. I can't think of the name of that. Yeah, so you could speculate that it's a Stockholm syndrome position for a woman to be able to forgive and maybe even actually gain some sense of trust, even anticipating that they might be betrayed or hurt again, whereas a man has less capacity. I would say that that's possible, you know. I mean, I do consider women to be more of a saboteur mindset, more able to work cunningly behind the scenes and to be passive aggressive, deceitful, treacherous, and tricky than men, you know. And I'm not saying that as an insult. I would say it's a strength that they have, actually, that they're the more diplomatic and able to be smooth about getting things to happen, as opposed to men are kind of more bull in a china shop approach in general. I'm being very general, you know, very stereotypical here. Obviously, there's exceptions to every rule, but
Michael Tessarian can build a strong case with that, like that, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The Women of the Illuminati series. I remember that. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. If people aren't aware of Michael Tessarian, he's a reasonably well-known and veteran of the conspiracy and alt history realms. And he did a pretty good, he's done more work than anyone else probably about talking about the position of women in power behind the scenes, the hidden hand and the secret societies and bloodlines type of stuff, and actually looking into the, you know, because we don't hear much about the female side typically, right? You know, of these really higher up shadowy hierarchies. You know, you don't hear a lot of female Rockefeller and Rothschild's names dropped out there, right?
Yeah, he's willing to go off on a limb and say things that everybody wants to say, but nobody will because it's politically incorrect. And forgive me if I'm repeating this, but say, you know, in my relationship, what I would always see is that my grandmother wanted to force my dad to do stuff. It wasn't his son, though, or wasn't her son, so she couldn't go the direct route. So she would manipulate my mom to force my dad to do something. Right? She had a strategy, and she would go hard on my mom and make she could make my mom make my dad. And it was pretty messy. So yeah, and you know, I think women have developed a lot of those much more like snaky back end, hidden kind of strategies to come up against what might have been really punishing and crushing male authority that was passed down through the crushing and punishing tyrants that ran the society, that tend to just mirror down into the families also. And you know, it's not a justifying or you know, making it a good approach, but I think that's how women tried to take power, which is a feminine shadow, taking power instead of receiving power that already is. And I have an interesting take on trust itself. My revelation was looking through the child archetype and seeing how the child desperately wants to trust. They want to trust somebody or something. They want to trust their mom and trust their dad as children. Later on, we want to trust doctors. We want to trust the government. We want to trust our friends. You want to trust your husband. You want to trust your whomever it is. And I really saw, and then the new age twist on that trust is, oh, don't trust all those people. Trust yourself. And that to me is another level of psyop, or maybe another level of confusion and being lost. Because when it comes to the quality of trust, which is so, like, there's almost nothing that can trump the trust. That when you put your trust in something, you truly are making yourself vulnerable to it. And to me, the only place that trust is appropriate is God, the source of where things come from. To say, like, you're my husband, I trust you. It's like, well, it's a moving target, right? And then how much pressure does that put on relationships where there is this, I trusted you not to, leave your socks on the whatever. If that's a really exaggerated example, but and then it ends up pitting the masculine and the feminine against each other through this, trying to avoid the betrayal of trust and upholding the trust. And again, when somebody say strayed in a relationship and then it's broken the trust, and then it's like you're saying, so difficult to get back, maybe even impossible to get past once those betrayals have happened. So I also would like to make the caveat that it's neither should we trust others, or mistrust them, because that's just two sides of the very same coin, exact identical signature vibration in there. So
I think you're making a strong case for tuning in to our intuitive processes, our intuition, which is that's we're supposedly, God is talking all the time, or source energy, whatever your belief is. We're receiving messages all the time. But when the mind is so chattering with all sorts of ideas, we can't, it's always been said that the intuitive voice is not going to turn the volume up. We have to lower this internal chatter, as Castaneda put it, to decrease the chatter so we can hear that internal guidance system. And then the more we experience with it, the more we take it to the intuition gym and exercise and play with it and work with it, the more the guidance is there. And if it's not, then it may be the wrong decision sometimes. But even that is a learning process, and we keep at it.
Yeah, excellent points. Excellent points. Sometimes I wonder if the desire to trust is actually a desire to be controlled, right? So that you can just let down your own work that it would take.
It's not my fault. They told me to do it. It lets you off the hook, right? I mean, so to speak.
Right. And you don't have to do that inward journey to actually hear what the guidance is appropriately. So you can, just relax all your faculties and put your hands in somebody else's hands. And if things go wrong, then it's their fault. You don't have to take responsibility for it.
Yeah, I would say that you're at a higher level than most people are perceiving, but that I completely agree with you that the only time I've seen trust heal is when both people have some kind of faith in God, for a lack of a more nuanced way of saying it. It doesn't have to be quote unquote faith in God, but the idea that there's a greater power and source of everything, and that you are both, whether you have an open agreement between each other or not, but that you both have this default setting that no matter how bad it hurts, how betrayed you feel, how screwed up everything is, how permanent it is, that there's an option, an opportunity to see it as affirmative and able to be moved forward through. But gosh, I really do believe that we are on a cusp of some kind of healing and awakening across the board, men especially. If we think of the 50s and even into the 60s versus now, the way that men act and treat one another is completely different, you know. And I do hope, I have a hope against hope that that's the realm that we're moving into as a permanent fixture, that we have this natural affinity to trust as a default to other people, sure, but the real trust lies with God. And so then if the other person fails you, you knew it was a possibility, you know. If you put up your tent, you know there's a chance you're going to get rained out. You might even get blown halfway off the mountain, but you still put up a tent anyway, you know. And so
I love that point, SB, because if you walk through the world and you never put up a tent or you never have a relationship, which is exactly what people resort to when
keeping it safe.
yeah.
keeping it safe. Exactly. Yeah. Ryan, were you going to say something as well?
I just think that the content keeps going in all kinds of possible vectors, you know. Because when you're talking about trust, and I was thinking about how a child really is looking for positive reflection all the time. And if they can't receive that, you're going to start to have a child or a psyche that is going to orient in a very different way. And the risk is to become narcissistic, you know, as one example. And all of a sudden, you know, you've got chaos and a child that grows up without any orientation inward at any depth and doesn't really orient outside of himself, other than it's always somebody else's fault or whatever. It's just you get into such states of neuroses, and then if you have conflict in relationship, it's just chaos. You have no way to even, you have no way or capacity to reach that place of forgiveness, which brings us, I think, all the way back to our ability to be vulnerable, to really like not project, to really look within again and again and again and again. But that's difficult for somebody that's been a child that hasn't been oriented at all in a positive state of, you know, reinforcement right from day one, perhaps.
Yeah, no reference point of any kind except the source, which by miracle, even though it's rare, people do find it.
Yeah, it's always there.
Right.
Yeah.
And the, you know, the more, you know, going back to that, excuse me, can we trust or can we forgive? I think the more conscious and aware the two individuals are, the better opportunity for it to, or if people are on the same wavelength, so being on the same track, wanting the same things, and they're very conscious and aware, working on themselves. I mean, even that's no guarantee, but still, I think the more aware one is, or the two are, then the easier it is to work things out and continue on.
Well, it's really interesting still on the child archetype here that it is the archetype that governs, like not governs in any exclusive way, but it is just so common that the child archetype plays out through romantic relationships. God was so joking about that one, right?
Yeah.
And how many of us have found ourselves in that situation where we act like children and not like adults when you get into some kind of conflict or betrayal or abandonment, and then the high expression of that child archetype is the hero's journey, answering the calling, going into purpose. And you guys already brought up the quality of purpose that is actually in some ways more masculine, right? So in a couple, if there's it's more natural for the men to full on follow their purpose, and the woman to support that man's purpose. Not to say she's void of it, and in fact, I don't think she would ever get out of her own purpose. But that's something that has created a lot of, you know, that again, men and women are just, it's like they're short circuiting against each other, where the same with trust, where if God is there and both both parties are really trusting God. If purpose is there, which I think is very, very close to freedom and its source, then that takes a lot of pressure off the relationship.
Yes, and I would say also is that when they're both aware, then if one has, like, if the woman has a gift and the man recognizes that, then he will do everything he can to support that gift and that flowering of that, just as she should support his flowering. They flower each other, win-win.
Nice.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, and this is kind of throwing it out to everyone, but I'm sure we've all been in relationships, and when you really look at them carefully, you're both reflecting some aspect or flavor of the same wound. So you've come together to mirror these things, and you may not actually come to recognize that you're just looking at another aspect. It may not necessarily be identical, but it's always there.
There's something that corresponds. There's
Yes.
always something, right? Yeah. So I don't agree with that. How they say, oh, if you don't like that person getting angry, it's because you have anger. It's like, no,
No.
it corresponds with something in you.
Yeah, it's deep. It's deeper into subconscious stuff, right?
Yeah, it can be that, but it can also be entirely different or much more nuanced. What you find inside yourself. Yeah, yeah.
It's like always stalking that wild pendulum.
Yes, yes, exactly, exactly. David, were you going to add something?
Well, I like what SB said about pitching a tent, and I think that's what you got to do. Is in this life, is you got to pitch your tent, and if you get blown off the mountain, you learn, or you try and understand how you can grow from that situation. And the same is true with relationships. I think I like what Ryan was saying. I think we are magnets, and the formation of our own magnet through the formative years of our life will have an effect on, or an impact on, what magnet is attracted or fits with us. And they say opposites attract, but it'll bring you those points of growth if you're able to see that, rather than just putting the tent up on the same hill and expecting a different result.
Right, right. That's interesting because the word grow keeps coming into my mind as well. And I'm curious what you guys think about, like is healing and growing synonymous with each other? And is that something that the masculine wants on the whole?
Well, can I offer, if I may quickly just throw my 5 cents in, which is that the healing that we're talking about, it reflects like an individual tableau or smorgasbord of life experience that has brought that person through that junction. And you might be able to look into that and say that's a point of healing because of that. However, growth, and I know maybe I'm splitting hairs here, but for me, growth is about, we've all come in here as sort of juniors, and we've all got to, no matter what our sort of healing journey and our trauma journey has been, we've all come in here to grow spiritually, I believe. And as humans, or as men or women, we have come here to grow. So just because this person got more healing or less healing doesn't negate the properties of needing to grow. So you take the plants behind you, you could snap one of them, the branches or whatever. It could be healed, that branch, but the tree itself is still going to do its growing thing.
Nice.
So I would kind of separate those two a little bit.
Nice. I like that. Any other thoughts on the theme of growing?
Yeah, for me, I really like some of the. I'm just going to quote Itzhak Bentov, "Stalking the Wild Pendulum." because he says in that book, development of the nervous system is synonymous with expansion of consciousness. Makes perfect sense to me. That's what we're doing. That is our growth. Therefore, realities are states of consciousness. Therefore, as an alchemist, you're clear that you aren't doing the healing work, but that it's an act of God and freed God energy. So as you do that work, you become empowered, and it's not your power, but you come to the realization that you're stepping into your purpose. You have to.
There you go. I was going to say I agree with that, but now I'm on to you, Ryan. Like, oh, that's a great, I should go read that book.
Oh yeah, the last quote was from another book.
Oh, funny. Yeah, that is to me the whole purpose. You know, that somebody said to me, a mentor at one point said that God is standing on the end of every blade of grass, going, "Grow, grow," like this. You know, and that's, I think, also in our culture of, but you know, new age culture, or like full of healing, because it's become a kind of marketplace of healing, that we get addicted to this idea of, well, we need an injury, or we need a pain, or we need a sickness or something to drive us to do any inner work. And as soon as you're not that anymore, then you just stop. Whereas nature grows infinitely. It never stops doing that.
That's right.
And that's, to me, much more our true nature.
Yeah, and I would think that in addition to that, right, is that every experience in life, the universe is speaking to us in some form or fashion, and it could be a gentle knock at the door, and it could be a pounding, beating the door down, something extremely severe. The love of the universe is trying to showing us, and if we can be open, I think, or the way I feel, is that to be open for everything that happens, every experience, whether it's painful or joyful, is there's a message there. There's something to be learned, and if we tense up and we start going into hate or that's not the way. We should be able to go. It takes a little practice, right? to welcome. Okay, there's something here for me. There's an experience that synchronistically has come into my life. The individual, the meeting, this group right here, all of us. I mean, we're there's something birthing here, powerful, process that who knows is gonna listen to it and be moved to take action in some way. But I truly believe that if we can, it's almost like the powers that were, as they say, that if we get emotionally give off a bunch of energy or watching something and start hating and why they get angry, they're like just putting an IV in us, just sucking us dry. So that we don't have we're too weak. So then we go to a distraction of some sort. And then there's thousands of distractions. You just turn the computer on and go. But but if we can look at what's happening and consider there's a gift here for us. There's something here to learn, something with an individual that we come in contact with, pleasant or unpleasant. There's something that we've come together to experience and grow from.
Very nice. Very nice. Any other thoughts about that? I had one follow-up question when you were talking about, like, something severe happens and that gives us a cue, like, oh, there's something in us that needs to like change or heal, or whatever word you want to use. But does it, is it a man, do you think, more likely to need something severe to make any kind of change, or do you think that would be just
I think it's the awareness of the individual and what state of mind they are in to recognize that, because either male or female, we're all wandering through here, and we all have our wants, and we all want to survive and excel and have. And I think in the awareness, if the individual is aware enough, they will pick up on, oh, there's something here. There's something here to be learned. There's something here to work through, to experience and grow.
Right. I was just thinking about my dad as an example. And from that chapter that you're reading before, Ryan, how he was pretty unstoppable. And he went through a lot of, and that's a good quality, but it also is something that delayed and maybe made healing impossible for him if it was possible before, because by the time he took that on in a really serious way, he was near dead. Every other little obstacle that came up for him, he would rise above it. And, because he had a lot of responsibilities, a lot of moving parts, everything was coming down on his shoulders. And he didn't feel like he could stop for any of the slower roadblocks. And then it was the full stop at the end of the life, which was really, not that abbreviated, but I imagine he might have lived longer otherwise.
Yeah, but like you said, I mean, he was diagnosed with cancer like 20 times or something. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, like that's extreme drive to just keep getting those severe, collisions with something, but still going through and going through. It just makes me think of all these faculties we have to kind of give us road signs that maybe tell us there's a cliff ahead. Whether we pay attention to them or not, I guess is everybody's got their own individual capacity or faculties or abilities to listen.
Right.
And I would also add that, the gift of your journey, the gift of his journey to you is look at what you have done with that experience, to share what you've gleaned out of that with all of us that are growing in this process in your journey, in our journey. It's quite profound.
Thank you, Douglas.
Yeah.
Appreciate that very much. So what about if we dive into what can be a pretty prickly topic of the role of male initiation rites? Some of them are known to be initiation rites in certain cultures where, the 10-year-old or 12-year-old boy gets tossed in the forest and has to fend for themselves for the first time, or gets removed from the mother. And, there's bar mitzvahs. Is that the male side? It's the bat mitzvah, I think, that we, I think it's the women are the bat mitzvahs. And then circumcision is a very big subject. It's like, wow, intense. I don't know if you guys want to, we just barely, touched on it and didn't go deep into it last time. Is it something you guys want to talk about and just open that door, at least for other men that might be thinking along those lines, or, having their own experiences? I did have a friend.
I would say it ain't good.
Yeah,
it's not a good idea.
It's not an initiation. Yeah.
Right. It is. Yeah. And even like, that's a great distinction, because I think a lot of even what are put out as initiations are not really cause for growth in any way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I have incredible psychic pain when I think of this.
Yeah.
Well, I'd say it comes back to some of the stuff you mentioned earlier, Beth, the idea that there's much of the world that is inverted, and it comes down to people who do have a position of power being willing to do underhanded and dishonest things. As a culture, we've been all mass initiated redundantly now, especially with the internet and the media. We're constantly under pressure to be initiated, and we're not even aware of it. Most of us don't realize that we're going through initiation after initiation. So if we could step back to something that was more like an honest process of initiation, obviously preferably not something that involves physical violence and surgery against your will as an infant, but something like, okay, so you're getting to the age of 13 or 15 and you're prepared and you're brought to a point where that you're going to be tested and that your ability to pass or fail determines some position of your status and your well-being in the overarching society. I mean, I think that there's something to be said for that, not only to be lacking, but also to be replaced with all these pseudo and, inverted initiatory processes that we see so much, I would use the big conspiracies as the most obvious ones. 9/11, I would say, was a huge occult ritual. We were all dragged into it. The more you study it, the more you realize that it wasn't just parapolitical. There's much more to it. It's some deep spiritual level of meaning there, and we weren't given a choice. And you get to wake up from it as much as you want to look and try to determine how deceived or how misunderstood you were. And, unfortunately, we have all experienced hundreds of various 9/11s, one way or the other,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're doing ritual on us, whether we agree to it or not, and especially when we don't agree to it. It's trauma initiation is really what it is, that breaks the psyche, that splits our consciousness into bits and pieces of pocketed off energy that's too intense for the nervous system to handle. Right? Like when you think of an infant's nervous system, not even formed yet.
Yeah.
Not even formed. The skull hasn't even fused, right? They have an open channel.
Yeah. It's certainly crazy, and I think then you realize if that's done to a child, what does that child do to society? Because he's gonna, it's gonna come out in behaviors.
Exactly. Yeah. It doesn't like injuries don't just go away because you didn't remember. And it's I think it's actually way more difficult and the powers that aren't anymore, like how you said that, Douglas. I think they know very well to injure the child between its birth and its 5th year. And that, it is a pretty done deal in some respects. But that's, to me, the big question is that, what would it take to heal from that?
Yeah, that I was going to say that's huge. And when I also thought about, what about shaming for someone for not wearing their mask or not getting your vaccine? I mean, it's like there's so much. It just goes on and on. As SB's saying that, I mean, it's total control, total ways of psyop and control. Whether, as you said, whether we won't have an idea or not, and certainly at that age, that young age, that vulnerable age, I've seen that happen several times, and I'm glad I was not conscious or whatever it was, but it was done to me. Good Lord.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I'm not sure where I'm exactly going with this, but I do have an underlying belief, and I'm curious to hear what you guys think, that we can actually heal from anything. I remember talking to one of SB's and our mutual contacts from the past, if I dare I say his name, James True, and he would say that no, it's not possible. Once you've split a tree, it will continue to grow, but in 2 directions, never as one tree. What do you guys think about that?
I don't concur with that, but there's one thing for sure: you can't put the what's the foreskin? What do they call it? Whatever. You can't put that back on. However, but I think that I don't know. I think that we can. Who knows what can be healed or what can't be healed in an individual? If the power of source comes through, who knows what Jesus come forth or Lazarus come forth. I mean, what?
No, I would agree that it's to me it's a cop out and a resignation, and I'm not even blaming people if they do cop out or be resigned. If you feel like that's it for you and you're cut off, then that's true. But I've seen miracles happen for people that are completely unexplainable. I mean, they're beyond description even. Of healing, of recovery, not only just recovery from a position of loss, but exceptional growth after that point that probably wouldn't have happened. And so I would say that just like a person with phantom awareness of their limb in an amputation, that maybe the physical changes happened in the 3D realm, but that the kind of back to what you said at the beginning, Beth, that actually everything's perfect all the time. Everything's balanced all the time. There's a terrific discomfort that comes with certain areas of extreme, that we don't like. So we want to get away from them, or we want them to change. But that's why I always cling to that scripture. Though he slay me, still I follow him, as far as my connection to source or to God. Like if what happens tomorrow is that I tragically die somehow, then that's okay, because that was within the parameters of whatever we're involved in here. Obviously, that's not what I want, but I am okay with this kind of mental and emotional exercise, because that's the reality we're in. We don't get any guarantees or know what's going to happen next. And so to me, what you said, James True said, to me is a position of apathy and a resignation and of fear. And I can't accept a foundational position of fear. Anytime I find it, I have to let go. Like, no, I can't have a foundational position of fear or apathy or resignation, because I know that that's the thing that's stopping you. So in my opinion, it's going to stop you more than anything. If you believe that you're not going to make it, then it's true. You might make it by a miracle anyway, like you talked about, not really believing that your headache would go away, but it went away anyway. But most of the time, if you have a seed of underlying doubt, it's more of a sabotage, and it'll bite you. And if you can let it go, then usually things open up easier.
Right.
Yeah, I was going to say, just to compound onto that, a white coat giving you the diagnosis that you got cancer, and then they freak out or whatever.
Right, exactly. And then to what degree is that, it's impossible to heal from, it's too big, it's too foundational. And then, I believed I couldn't heal from that migraine in such a short time yesterday, but I did it anyway. And like, I tried it anyway. I used my tools. I used the method. I thought, okay, well, there's that belief. Good. Nice to see you. Nice to have you around. But let me see if I could break some ground in this. And then, so I think people use that belief that it sounds logical, right? The tree splits and you got two parts and they grow in different directions and never come back together. But do they just end up using that as their excuse not to do the work and not to even try to heal from something really big?
Yeah, it could just, you could argue too that that's a healthy expression of somebody's need to distance from that, because it's not something that they're ready yet to, really embrace. It's just too big. So they're resourced to not deal with it right now. And that's a healthy, that could be argued as healthy,
Back to the nervous system that has a certain capacity,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
that is the reality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can't breach that. You can't go where you're not ready to go.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
not
exactly. And where you don't have the conscious intention and will to grow the capacity of your nervous system, then, it takes it from the realm of being, yes, possible, but not probable,
Yeah.
not likely for it
Yeah.
to happen. Yeah.
It reminds me of, just as an example, when I started to do the training, I had a severe hernia, inguinal hernia. So it was like, every male that I talked to is like, well, you got to get that, you got to get surgery. And I'm like, no, I don't know. I didn't feel right to do that. And after about, I think it was it's definitely over 2 years. I had a dream, woke up from a dream one night, and it was very lucid. I sat there writing it down, and then I realized, oh my God, that's my hernia. It's starting to heal. And it did. It was
Wow.
another 5 months. We're talking a severe hernia, so anything's possible, but there was a lot of emotional layers to get through to just land at that dream and then go from there to the actual physical healing.
Right on. Right on.
It's fully repaired. It's like it's gone.
Right. Right. Amazing. That's a great story. I love that. And so how could, we have anything to do with making that kind of thing more possible and more common? What does that take? I know I'm asking the unanswerable question. But,
Not
I
unanswered.
would say look for miracles. Look for them. Active, even if you just want to use your search engine or your YouTube search bar, just look up miracle stories and see how many of them that you can convince yourself that you think the person's lying or being dishonest. Because there's thousands and thousands of miracle stories, similar to what Ryan just said. Like, oh no, that's impossible to resolve if you don't blank. And instead, the intuitive centered feeling said no. And then a dream comes and healing, miraculous, spontaneous healing occurs somehow, Whereas most people say, oh, no, that's impossible, right? But it's not. Almost nothing's impossible. I'm not sure I believe anything is literally impossible,
Nice. You're going to say something,
Well, I
Ryan?
was just going to say, I think the dream was just, I'd done all this work for a long time to get to that point where the dream said, hey, now it's starting to mend.
Hallelujah. That's awesome.
Yeah. So it wasn't, so the dream didn't just kind of make a miracle. I think it was a miracle in the making over a longer period of time.
Right.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Germanisch Heilkunde, German New Medicine, Dr. Hammer, who the emotional trauma, I mean, that emotion, the shock, and then healing from that shock and all kind of things, the headache, your headache went away, it's miraculous.
Yeah, the shock is a very big subject because that's the best weapon that the tyrants have, is to put us in that state that sometimes people don't realize, that state of shock. Like, it is there in some ways to protect you, because it is otherwise going to overwhelm your nervous system. So you need to have a place, but it's the lowest vibration of all existence, akin to apathy, not feeling, numbness. That I know you guys all know, just to say that out loud. And it is extremely, it's not even hard to use the word disempowering. It's like disabling, right? Just leaves you in that white noise kind of a place. It's the worst pain, but it seems better than the actual pain that's waiting for you when you come out of shock, right? So it's got such gatekeepers that, and this is something that when I teach about this, I often will quote how when people come out of that shock, sometimes they end up committing suicide.
And many did. Well, it reminds me of SB was talking about the World Trade Center. And how many times do we see that airplane, flying into the building, and then later people jumping, and I mean, my God, then the whole thing coming down. I mean, it's
yeah, that was a trauma-based ritual.
Totally.
Yeah, that resulted in a ton of people believing what was going on. One other thing I wanted to quote that I did a little snippet in the House of Free Will the other day about, it reminded me of a character in the Indian scriptures called Ashtavakar. And he was totally mangled. His name means figure 8. And you already saw this, Douglas, or heard this, yeah?
Sort of.
Yeah. And so his body was completely contorted and every way misaligned, and just physically not in a good way. But he's an example of having completely awakened, completely realized, despite that. So to me, that's a very hopeful story, and it's exactly what it's meant to be, that character teaching how it doesn't matter how injured you are, how many body parts have been taken from you, how many people, we're talking about one example here, but also losing the uterus and losing the gallbladder and losing the tonsils and losing being ripped out of us in gory satanic rituals, as far as I'm concerned. But that never is going to hold a candle to the power of the human spirit and the will, right? Where there's a choice, where there's a decision that's not forfeited, then God hears us. and cooperates with that, especially when it doesn't come from a fear motive underlying it.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So we can overcome, and that's the beauty of having such extreme circumstances to work with, that we can see the enormous possibility.
And yet the journey might not. The journey may be to move on. Who can say that one should not feel any guilt or shame, or I didn't do it right. I can't, whatever. I mean, some journeys are, who knows.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. There is great freedom in the power of right now. Michelle, you got it. Yeah. And that's the only time you can heal. A lot of people think that they have to go heal their past, and that's not possible. That's done. That's gone many years ago, or even yesterday. But the residue that you're left with, the level of your feelings, your beliefs, your thoughts, and especially the programming, that is all under your control because it's all right now.
That's when the pendulum isn't moving.
Nice. Nice. There you go. Okay, I'm back on balance.
Exactly.
Nice. Well, let's see what else. I think there was just one other topic in, maybe we've covered it, how relationships with men and women have been affected in tragic ways. We kind of went through that. Here's one we didn't go through, is the effects of our sibling societies. So we talked about how we might be first generation healing, first generation figuring out what is a natural masculine, what is a natural feminine, and how our we've been raised so that we're just learning from our peers, not from our elders. Right? The knowledge of the elders has been degraded. It has been made obsolete in a lot of ways.
Right.
And then, that's the way I grew up, that I would never go to my mom with a problem. Never. I would go to my best friend who's 11 too. Right? And then she's as dumb as I am. So I don't get anywhere in the process. And then, the way that my mom was raised, she might also not have been of assistance in certain things.
Right.
But how do you think this has affected the masculine, given that, the role of the father is very different than the role of the brother?
Mm-hmm. First thing I thought about was, but you switched you changed the question on me. But the first thing I thought about was how the grandmothers and the elders had carried the medicine and the knowledge of herbology, or the knowledge of repair, and how our men that worked in the field and in nature, how they knew how to work with wood or work with animals, heal. I mean, there was that. All that has been lost, unless you're very lucky to have that passed on to you as a young individual. But then you changed the question on me, and then I kind of got lost in trying to understand that. But
Yeah, it's a wide open question. I don't really have an answer to it yet myself, but just to bring it back to the focus on the masculine and the potential, I probably should have given it more thought. But I'm suspecting. Hello, Platus, nice to see you. I'm suspecting that the sibling society has been huge for, like, first of all, one thought is degrading the role of the father.
Wait, what could you clarify the sibling society? I just want to make sure that I understand it.
Sure. Yeah, I'm using that term like people know what it is. So there's a book. It's actually called The Sibling Society, and it's Robert Blake, I believe. Did I get it right? It's a Blake, and he talked about how this phenomena, we have gone from following people who knew more than we did. Mentors, parents, grandparents who had knowledge of whether it was the land, or they had seen over time how things happen, like how conflicts always resolve somehow, and you should never break up with anyone because it'll come around. That have seen for the long haul, and then turning to whether it's actual brothers and sisters. How parents kind of abandon children to their siblings. Like they don't won't stand up for somebody that's being bullied. They'll go like, go work it out.
Oh, yeah.
But if there's a bully there and it's really truly, an unfair, cruel situation, and the parent doesn't step in, I freak out about that. Like, you're sending the children to raise each other, and they're dumb as bells, and they abuse each other. And I saw awful things with my nephews. It was the same kind of philosophy, like go out there and work it out in the wild. And it didn't, it didn't produce what they wanted. So then we stop wanting to turn to elders. We somehow are more attracted to our peers. So it could be your brothers and sisters, but can also just be those peers. And you see how, women's peer relationships have been really toxic. Whoops, lost SB. And like there's, again, it's sort of like the masculine feminine. There's this kind of thing when you're and there will be like trying to gain dominance in the relationship when there's no real true actual basis for dominance that the elder would have, because they have more knowledge, more experience, more wisdom. And so on the whole, we have a sibling society where we don't have the elders, we have each other, and there's a certain goodness and there's a companionship or camaraderie in that, but you can't learn very much.
Yeah.
Can I offer something on this then?
Please.
I think the question before about the rite of passage, or the doing the some kind of teenage thing, that kind of applied perhaps better in a situation where people were living in a village, because it would be in that village that you would be demonstrating yourself to have now reached manhood, and those people in your village would acknowledge that process. And it's the same village that housed the elders, the wise ones, who would have been responsible for supporting the raising of children, resolving of dispute, and so on. So I think that on both questions, because we have over the last few centuries structurally lost that village identity or reality. We now live, most of us, in cities, and the people down the road don't care that you've just completed your coming of age process or whatever. And the people down the road you don't know or trust, such that you could ask them for advice from an elder, kind of thing. So, the fabric of our setup is quite a long way from that ideal of everything being contained within this. And so, when we were talking earlier on, SB and others were talking about 9/11 as a MK, trauma-based mind control, our parents and their parents were put through their own versions of 9/11 in their time. And the breakup of the wise ones who held the knowledge, they were washed away by an education system that said, no, well, we now have a collection of all the history and all the knowledge. Don't bother with the old people down the road. We'll teach you, and you can tell them how dumb they are, because they don't know what you now know, because you've come to our smart school. So it really is such a, and I'm not giving up on it, and I'm not I'm up for the kind of challenge, but I also acknowledge that the majority of us are living in situations that have already broken the family, have already broken the village down, such that these are merely this is the outcome of that program down the line. So it is really that you've got to come back to trust, getting people back into a community together, and in that community, so you establish your we don't want to, we spoke about hierarchy the time before, but, I think that, hierarchy where there are the elders, the wise woman, the old men who can show the guys how to do a thing or tell them how it was in the time they had that storm and how they got off the mountain. We can achieve that, but it's really not just to say, well, this one guy needs to do differently. It is how we are collectively engaging.
Right. Beautiful point. I love that, David. And then that's the Achilles heel for any kind of cooperation and living in true community, is that we have this foundation of mistrust for each other, and that I'm sure there's way more than that. Just inability to get along, and to when people get triggered, they don't have the tools or even the knowledge that they can do a great deal of their work here inside themselves without trying to go manage somebody else. And, so that's why I stay on my bandwagon of helping people to get into the heart and soul of their own motives, to be able to withstand, a trigger or a challenge or somebody coming up against you. And there's a lot of relationships that I wouldn't be in anymore if I couldn't do that, but I can inevitably do most of the work here. And then, like a miracle, like SB said, things shift on the outside. People change not because I needed them to change or wanted them to change. I did, but that wasn't working. And then doing the work here, it really does influence and affect everything that happens around us and how people are. So that's where I see the hope is in establishing ourselves in a place to really be in relationship with people and to risk that, right? Because we've gone the other direction. If it's a pendulum from community to isolation, like, whoa, we're way over here, way the heck over here. And that's, that's not conducive. Go ahead, Ryan, if you're going to say something.
I was just going to say, just to, follow what you're saying and what David said, because I certainly can sit here and reflect on my childhood and admiring certain elders, but that becoming less the case. But that worked, I think, to varying degrees then. And then there was sort of, like you say, sibling society. But that, I think what's coming now or emerging is you are becoming your own elder.
That's it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the calling. It's sort of extraordinary.
Exactly.
To be your own elder. Yeah. Yeah. And that might not always be the case, but that's how pioneers have to roll. That's
kind of the journey in a way.
Yeah, good point. Nice. That's a good punchline.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. Yeah. And then again, it's the same with the trust. Don't have the illusion that it's going to come from some, normal place, whether that's inside yourself or outside of yourself, but it's from the, supernatural. Where we're
I hate to break it to you, Ryan, but you are already an elder in many situations anyway, mate. So it's really, you're stepping into the role that you're meant to be, because remember, there are 25-year-old men behind you who are going to need, some kind of the light that they can look to. So maybe this is the natural order of things, is that we get to a particular point. I'm not saying you have to be over 50 at all. I don't have a number in my mind, but there is a point at which we're kind of, maybe through the experiences that we've had, able to step into that position of, yes, being elder to yourself, but you are an elder in your village, and I'd expect others would enjoy your light as a guidance.
Thank you, David.
He's definitely a leader on the ice, for sure.
Thank you, Douglas.
But you see, you know, because, you know, knowing a little bit about that, you know, that's an example of where, you know, as one of the senior, you know, members, people are going to look to you and go, well, how's he, you know, what's his situation in this? How did Ryan respond when we were faced with that particular challenge? Now, you know, it could be a good or a not so good response, and from that, others will learn and take their lead.
Well said, David. You know, because all I can say is, my God, what a journey so far. You know, wow. But it's worth it.
Well, if
Really
you
is.
want to be if you want to train, you know, young captains for shipping, and you've been out in all the biggest storms, and it's like, you were in that storm in '87 or whatever, they'd be like, you know, you're the guy I want to teach me, because you have been through those things, right?
Right.
And this is the advantage of sometimes being in that experience of trauma or hardship.
And that's exactly how you turn that experience of trauma into a gift for others, right? It might even be something that you, at some levels, can't heal from. Maybe your family got blown apart in it. Maybe your body got damaged and injured. But by turning around and, you know, doing healing at the level of the that which is completely in our control and responds moment to moment. It's not like a bone, which also can heal. I mean, one of our common friends and a student and apprentice, Diana, has healed like immeasurable things in her body that were all considered to be unhealable, including spinal alignment and lupus and autoimmune diseases. Like, she's like a walking, not miracle, because it was all her work that she did that deliberately. And so, yeah, you can get yourself to a place where you're either that healed or you have the knowledge. And you know, one of my favorite things is sharing my mistakes. Where did I go wrong? Because that just might save one person from having to make that mistake. I know it's like an enormous gift when people are open enough with their lives and willing to share their mistakes. I can then choose, like, oh yeah, that's not going to be me. I've saved myself a ton of trouble learning from other people's mistakes. So yeah, you literally alchemize the trauma and or the misfortune that is not natural into an actual gift for yourself and others. So yeah, that's always my hope and my prayer that can happen. And I see more and more people doing it every day.
Becoming living alchemy.
Nice. Beautiful. Exactly.
Yeah.
And being the example, like David said, too, people are going to look to you. Right. And they don't hear what you say so much as notice what you do.
I think, David, I think of you in the foxhole back earlier in your life, and how that experience was life-changing, and I don't know. Could you talk about that? How did that affect you?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, everybody deals with those traumas in their own way, and having met with veterans, I know that we've all had our own life journey, even though we all sort of got thrown in the same soup. And I have visions, perhaps in the future, of me being able to relate to other men because of the experience that I had. I began to do that in 2014 after I published my book. But once I started talking about 9/11 the next year, 2015, and then Flat Earth, I had no one wanting to talk to me anymore from those veteran communities. And I had been invited to some, you know, pretty big talks and things. So I don't know. I mean, you know, I've sometimes said the last 5 years of my life have been more difficult than the months on the front line in combat. So I don't, you know, I know obviously it's like, but you could be saying for a hockey guy, you know, at the end of the day, you've got to go out there and do some hard stuff today. You know, you're going to be faced with some really difficult challenges, and it's not for everyone. But it does bring a certain edge to your game, if you like, having walked through that experience. So I don't overblow it, but at the same time, I don't, you know, write it off, because many people go through like tough challenges. But I know, like, for example, if I was to be talking to guys who had a problem with alcohol abuse, they would hear me better had I had my own walk with alcohol specifically. And so I feel like, although I haven't had that problem, I can talk on other things. And so when it comes to dealing with or addressing men who've had certain traumas in their experience, I can relate to them perhaps because of the experiences I had at war. But I don't like to put too much on it, because the hardships that some people go through in, you know, spending a few years in life. Thank you, Michelle. The hardships that some people go through in their life, or that might end up with them being on the street or whatever, arguably is tougher than lining up in a trench, you know, where all your food and weaponry and everything has been provided for you, and you've got 30 guys, or you know, either side of you, or whatever. You're in a team. It's a whole different thing, you know, doing life than it is, you know, standing inside of an army or a police force or whatever, and meeting up with an opposition or whatever. So thanks for the question, and I know that obviously I'm well set to deal with guys with veteran related kind of issues because of my own experience of having walked through that, for sure.
It's a great point, David, and that's why we're all tasked to find our purpose, because there are ways that we can help people that nearly, you know, if no one can relate to you, it doesn't matter if you have the process and the mechanics of healing. If you can't even say, like, between addicts, I have a friend that was saying he's not going to go sit in a meeting where there is overeating anonymous because he was doing cocaine. Right. And that's a whole different culture. That's a whole different world. That's a lot of different language. And there's just this world, like, yes, addiction is one thing, but we need different kinds of people. And that's where, again, your unique life experience is never irrelevant. It's often people think like, oh, well, I'm just one of many who had this happen. But until you get to the other side enough, maybe not completely, whatever exactly completely would mean, but you get there enough where you have compassion for those that are still stuck in the way you were. And inevitably the calling to mentor is there. So, yeah. And it might be in unobvious ways too, that might not just be like, oh, I'm a perfect fit for veterans. Like, people would say, oh, because since I survived a lymphoma, then I should be out telling people how to survive that. And really, I never say that. I do have some people come to me, oh, I heard your story and like to hear something about that. But it's not my soapbox, because I went, I got to a depth of the root of the core of that I think is more valuable than, I mean, even just risking saying, oh yeah, I've got the cure for this and I've got the cure. I don't even want to say that word because it's a highly censorable one. So yeah, you don't know. And that's where the whole is always greater than the sum of the parts. And wholeness is an experience that I don't think can be destroyed or killed. Even if the body were to be destroyed, that wholeness still exists. And we always have access to that, which to me is also synonymous with healing and purpose. Mm-hmm. So this has been a really beautiful discussion. I got a note from SB that he's out for the remainder, but said to share his appreciation for you guys and that he enjoyed the conversation. It's actually a long message. I didn't see the whole entire thing. But thank you so much for joining. Do you guys have any closing words? Do you want to just, again, repeat anything that people could come and take you up on? You're all excellent coaches and could provide any service in that respect. So, Douglas, do you want to go first?
Sure. I think behind every challenge in life, there's a gift. And it's our part of the healing process, part of the balancing process, if you want to call it that, part of the empowering process is to not go around, but go through and face it as the journey work, and find the release, and then become stronger.
Amen. And I do recommend Douglas.
And,
Go ahead.
and a woman.
And a woman.
Yeah, a man and a woman.
Ah, there you go. Oh, I used to say that all women. That's funny. And I do definitely recommend Douglas as a coach if you're looking for, especially if there's connected to digestion and that kind of thing. Douglas has a lot of expertise there. And Ryan, would you like to share as well?
Only thing that comes to mind is may your pendulum be still.
Nice. I love it. I love it. And do you want to let people know how they could take you up on your work, whether it's with coaching or the EMF work or a combination?
Yeah, best to reach me through neuralvitalitynetworks.com. It's 3 words, Neural Vitality Networks. So it's all about the nervous system.
Nice. That's great. Yeah. It's amazing how it all ties together. And David?
Well, I'm available on Trinity 4 Man, number 4 Man. And we've got a 4-day course coming up in October. So you can find out more about that on my YouTube channel, Trinity 4. I am available for coaching if people are looking for that. But I think my final message for the evening, I have enjoyed this conversation, so I really am grateful for the invitation. It's nice to see some of my old alma mater here. Mm-hmm. But I think, we actually are the expression of an eternal, loving, infinite, higher self or consciousness. We are that, and we return to that. But I think that we have the potential for a lot of healing, or repenting, or coming back together, bringing ourselves back to wholeness, to completion. How it plays out in the after this life experience, I obviously don't have the answers on that. But I think we are meant to create a form of, through our experience, through the trials, we are meant to create a joyous experience for ourselves in this lifetime. And that, even if the tree has been rent, even if the tree has been bent or buckled, the tree is going to do everything in its power to return to a true heading and grow straight towards the sun or the roof. And I think that's what we're meant to do, is we're meant to shine, we're meant to grow straight and true, despite the traumas that might have been wrought upon us. So there's work to be done. There's a potential for each of us to, I think, nature shows us that, to make an awful lot of progress for ourselves in our own individual story. So thank you.
Wonderful message. Thank you so much. All right, everyone. I appreciate your presence in the chat. Thanks for all your comments. Michelle, sorry I didn't get to every one of them, but it's been fantastic. I love this conversation. I have no idea what's going to, if anything that's going to come of it. It was a thread to follow. I continue to be fascinated. I have to imagine there are other women out there that love hearing inside the heart and mind of men, especially that have done so much work on themselves for the sake of freedom. So have a beautiful rest of your day, everyone. I'm going to play an outro by my son, who is Psycho on YouTube. I'm going to actually just quickly share his link, since that's part of our deal, that I would do that. So darn, where is that link? I don't know.
See you guys.
All right. Have a great rest of your day, Ryan. Okay. Lots of love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Beth.
All of the links are in the notes below, and including for my son. So, all right, everyone.
Okay.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.